This is a walkthrough of problem E17A26. I had a request from a student to walk through it and go over how to arrive at the answer that the My Accounting Lab gives you. From this point forward, I'm basically going to, if I get requests to walk through a problem, I'll post them for everyone to see, but I'm not necessarily going to post a walkthrough of each problem. So after you've used the My Accounting Lab resource and done the Help Me Solve This tab and tried to work through them, and you still don't understand the answer even after it gives you the right answer at the end, and you want me to walk through it and show you how to do it, let me know, email me, call me, and I will post something like this. And that way anyone who had a similar question can see it as well. But if nobody had a question on how to do it, I don't have to waste my time walking through it. So this first part should be pretty easy to look up if you don't remember from the reading. You're basically just picking out from the drop-down menu the correct formula for earnings per share. And you'll see that it's this one right here, net income minus preferred dividends, and then take that number and divide it by the weighted average number of common shares outstanding. Okay, so the next part is the one that is tricky, and it's mainly tricky because, excuse me, I don't think My Accounting Lab does a great job of explaining what they're trying to get you to do here. It's one of the disadvantages of, there's just no great way of doing it. So they do it with the drop-down menus to where you pick out what goes where. That's not horrible, but let me just walk through it and hopefully this clears things up a little bit. So I have my little part of my spreadsheet visible here in the window, and I'll move it over if I need to see more of it. But basically for this first, they give us the first category that we want to figure, income from continuing operations, and they basically want this on a per share basis using this formula right here. Okay, so we're going to start where it says net income here. We're going to plug in the income from continuing operations that they give us, $623,000. And then we're going to subtract out preferred dividends for the year, and that will give us our first number. And then we'll divide that by the number of shares outstanding. And normally when you figure your weighted average number of common shares outstanding, you have a beginning balance for the year, you have an ending balance for the year, and you take the average of those two numbers. In this case, they only provide us with the ending balance, so we're just going to assume that that was the balance all year. We don't have to do any calculations there. So let me start. I'm going to highlight these cells and just make sure they're all showing up as dollars. So first thing I'm going to put over here is my $623,000 that I'm getting from right here, and that's the first part of my equation, what they call net income right here. But in this case, since we're figuring basically the components of net income on an earnings per share basis, instead of putting net income here, we're going to put income from continuing operations there. Okay, so the next part is just figuring what the preferred dividends for the year will be. So we look at the number of shares of preferred stock. Remember, those are obviously the ones that are going to provide preferred dividends. So what we need to do is find the total par value of this stock, which we get by multiplying 11,000 shares times the $20 par value per share. So that's what I'm going to put in this little cell right here. I'm just going to do equals 11,000 times 20. So that shows me that overall I have $220,000 of par value of stock there. And this 5% means that each year when I declare dividends, the preferred dividends amount is going to be 5% of whatever this value is, this par value I just figured. So for this line, I'm going to do equals this par value that I figured times 0.05 for 5%, and that gives me $11,000. So remember what I'm trying to get, net income, or in this case, income from continuing operations minus preferred dividends. So income from continuing operations right there, minus the preferred dividends I just figured out right there, and that gives me $612,000. Okay, so that's the first part of the equation, and then I have to divide that number by the weighted average number of common shares outstanding, which in this case is just the one number that they gave us for shares outstanding. So for this cell, I'm going to go equals this number I just figured for the first part of the equation divided by the 45,000 shares outstanding, and that gives me $13.60 per share. Okay, so that goes in that first box. Next item is going to be my loss from discontinued operations. As we see right here, we have a loss on discontinued operations, net of income tax saving of $36,000. So, since I already subtracted out the preferred dividends here in this equation, all I'm doing with this loss from discontinued operations is dividing it by the number of shares outstanding. So I will take the amount they gave me as the loss, which is $36,000, divided by number of shares outstanding, and I get a loss of 80 cents. Remember, to show a loss, I either need to do a negative sign in front, or the preferred way in accounting is generally to put it in parentheses. So I have 80 cents per share on my loss from discontinued operations. And this little double line here signifies that I'm going to basically net these two together, and that's what the next line is going to be. So if I'm netting those two together, then it's going to end up being one of these two options. Since we know we haven't touched the extraordinary item yet, so we want to look at since we haven't touched the extraordinary item yet, we want to look at income before extraordinary items. Okay, so I'll just net those two together, which I'll do right here in case you couldn't do it in your head. And that gives me $12.80. And then finally, I need to add my extraordinary item. But again, remember, I'm doing that on a per share basis. So I just take the extraordinary gain, net of tax that I had, and divide that by the number of shares outstanding to give me a per share number of $2.60. And again, you see the double line here, parallel line, and that just tells me I'm going to net whatever is above it together. And so again, in case you don't want to do it in your head, just add that and that for a total of $15.40 net income earnings per share. When I check my answer, there you go.